So the meeting this evening and also Thursday's meeting is going to be recorded. We're going to be posting that on the project webpage for anyone who wasn't able to tune in or anyone who wants to rewatch the presentation. I'd like to go ahead and get started with some quick housekeeping. So I'm sure everyone's Zoom experts now. We've all been living in the Zoom world for a couple of years now, but I did want to go over just a few things. We ask that everyone please stay on mute this evening during the presentation. And we'll be muting folks if it happens to kind of switch on and detract it all from the conversation or from the presentation itself. We will have an open period for discussion and question and answer a little bit later on this evening. The chat is open. I'll be dropping relevant links and other information in the chat. You folks are welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation using the chat box. If we're able to get to it during the presentation time, then we will, if it's kind of a pressing question. Otherwise, we'll circle back around during the question and answer period. I'd like to start with some introductions. So I'll begin with myself. Aloha, everyone. My name is Lily Makaila. I am a planner with Townscape Inc. We are working with Maui County Department of Water Supply, putting together the Moloka'i Water Use and Development Plan. I recognize some of the folks who are on the call this evening. Aloha and welcome back. Thank you so much for your time for tuning in this evening for our presentation. I'd like to turn it over to Sherry and Bruce for self-introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Hirooka. I'm also with Townscape and been working with Lily and others on putting together this water use and development plan. And want to also thank everyone for taking the time to come and listen and hopefully share with us your thoughts. So thank you very much.
Aloha, everybody. I'm Bruce Tsuchida, the old gray hair chief of Townscape Inc.
Mahalo, Eva. If you could introduce yourself.
Aloha, everyone. I'm Eva Blumenstein. I'm the planning program manager for Maui County Department of Water Supply. I don't have a very active role in this plan development. I'm very grateful to have Townscape and Marty carry that. So mahalo, everyone, for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Eva. Marty? Oh, you're still on mute, Marty.
Of course I am. My name is Marty Buckner, and I'm the project manager. I've been working with Bruce and Sherry and Lily. And yes, they've carried the brunt of the work, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. I can see that a few folks have just hopped on. Aloha again, welcome everyone. We are recording this meeting, so I want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. We do have the chat box open. If you have questions at all during the presentation, you're welcome to put it into the chat box. We're going to be keeping an eye on the chat box, and if we aren't able to get to it right away during our presentation time, we will most definitely circle back during discussion and question and answer. Again, we're going to begin with a presentation on the preliminary draft of the Water Use and Development Plan. We do have that available online, and we're going to be sharing some details and also sharing more information about where you can look over the draft, how you can provide comments, and any other questions that you folks might have. Sherry, if we don't have anything else, then we can dive right into the presentation whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Lily. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see the slideshow? Okay, great. So just to kind of walk us through what we're going to be doing tonight, we've already started with the introductions. We're going to do project overview, a little bit about water resources and systems. And for some of you, that's going to be kind of a review. We have done a little bit of updating on that as well, though. Preliminary water use and future water demand, again, a little bit of a review. Oh, you know what? This is not the right agenda. Oh my gosh, how embarrassing. We're going to be going over some of the water use and future water demand. That's true, but we also want to talk to you about kind of a framework for how we will be putting together the water supply options in the next step. So that's what we're really trying to get at. My apologies for that. Little bit about the background on what we're trying to do. So we are working on the Moloka'i Water Use and Development Plan. This is mandated by the State Water Code, and it's a part of the Hawai'i Water Plan, which is not just one plan, it's made up of a number of other plans. So if you can see my cursor, it's made up of the Water Resource Protection Plan and the Water Quality Plan, which really are the policy setting plans. There's also the State Water Projects Plan and the Agricultural Water Use and Development Plan, which takes a look at what the state needs are in terms of water. And then each county is mandated to do a water use and development plan for their own county. Maui County has been developing plans for each island, which is why we're focusing right now on Moloka'i. We also take into account the land use plans, which is why you see here the Moloka'i Community Plan update that was done a couple of years ago, and then also, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, as well as other types of plans. So the overall goal of the Moloka'i Water Use and Development Plan is to find a balance between the management of water resources and sustainable water use. On the right side, you'll kind of see our really general process. So we've been kind of collecting a lot of data, looking at water resource issues and needs, talking with community, and we've come up now with the preliminary draft water plan. And so this is looking at the water demands, and we put together what we think is a first cut of water resource values, goals, and principles. And this is really what we're hoping to get a lot of the feedback on tonight and for the rest of the month through consultations. After that, we're going to be putting together the draft Moloka'i Water Plan, which will be then kind of identifying water sources and matching that up with the water demands. So previous meetings that we've had, we started with an introductory meeting way back in June 2021. We've had a series of regional meetings, as well as a number of just individual and small group talk stories. We had a preliminary meeting in March on what we knew at the time about water use and projected demands. And then Lily did an in-person outreach in May to just get a few more people, be able to talk to people face to face. So what is the purpose of this preliminary draft? Just wanted to kind of note that we're going to be calling this the Moloka'i Water Plan rather than the Moloka'i Water Use and Development Plan, which is what it's called in the State Water Code. And this is because the Water Code it mandates the counties to develop a plan that sets forth the allocation of water to land use. And that's kind of all it says. But what we're also trying to do is be a little bit more holistic and looking at water resource management, looking at community values, resource protection, environmental and cultural needs. So we felt it wasn't just a water use and development plan. So that's why we're going to be calling it the Moloka'i Water Plan. We also are going to be sharing, the revised water demand projections, like we mentioned. We are trying to understand community values regarding water and asking for your feedback on the resource principles that we're going to be using to guide that water allocation. What it doesn't do yet is, saying what sources are going to be used to provide water to match up with the water demands. That's going to be the next step. But that's why we want to make sure that we understand the community values that we need to keep in mind as we do that. So, one of the things that we are keeping in mind is that, water rights, laws and policies, management structure, people's relationship to water, they're very unique in Hawaii as compared to other places. And, especially on Moloka'i, where we have found out very quickly that people have an especially strong bond with the land and with the water. And so we have been really trying to better understand the special circumstances and issues and needs of the community. That way we can, start to address some of these issues and needs in such a way that it would make the most sense. So we kind of went over critical water issues in our last meeting. And this is just kind of to reiterate and remind people, and this is in the preliminary draft plan, so you can take a look at that and get a little bit more background. But through research and discussions with the community, we've identified these issues, and they relate to things like ties to cultural and subsistence practices, overall watershed health and sustainability, domestic uses, agricultural and other economic uses, management and regulations. And it's a very long list. So efficiency and use, invasive species, the interconnectedness of all forms of water from Mauka to Makai, planning for climate change and the expected impacts like increased drought, more intense storms, where the water is used and where the sources are located. That's very unique. And then, the affordability of water and its links to other utilities. So we're trying to keep these issues in mind as we assess the information that we've been gathering. So moving on to water use, demand, and production. So back in March, we presented some preliminary water demands. And since then, we've dug into the numbers more, we've gathered more information, and we've met with some water users and providers. And so we just wanted to share a little bit of an update of our analysis. And one thing that we're doing now that we didn't do the last time was kind of make a distinction between demand and production. And so demand is, how much water are we using? Like when you turn on the faucet, right? That's how much you're using. Versus production, which is how much we are pumping from the ground or diverting from a stream. And they may be different. And that difference is called unaccounted for water, or sometimes called water loss. So, sometimes you may have leaks, or sometimes there are, accounting errors. Sometimes we don't even have data on one or the other. So there's a lot of head scratching that we had to do to try and figure out how to come up with numbers that made sense. So for existing water production, so again, how much are we taking out of the resource? How much are we pumping? How much are we diverting? This is a 2016 to 2020 5-year average. So if we look at total production, so the total amount that we're diverting and pumping, it's about 7.8 million gallons of water per day. About a third of that is coming from the ground, and about 2/3 of that is surface water. So if we're looking at just groundwater, we have a sustainable yield of 79 million gallons of water per day. And as a reminder, on the bottom right, you can see the definition of sustainable yield, which is, how much water can we pump from the ground without impairing the resource. Permitted use, so that's how much people are allowed to pump, is about 7.4 million gallons of water per day, so about 9% of sustainable yield. That means, excuse me, that means that about 91% of sustainable yield is unallocated. For the Kualapu'u aquifer system area, that is the aquifer that has the highest permitted use at about 4 million gallons of water per day. And that's about 81% of its sustainable yield. And if you take a look at the graphic, what we tried to do was we have these circles that represent the sustainable yield, and the green is unallocated and the red is allocated. So for most of them, you can see that, you know, most of the aquifers are unallocated. If you look at Kuala Pu'u, you can see that about, you know, 80% of that is allocated. So again, for groundwater production, of the almost 3 million gallons of water that is pumped from the ground, about a third of that is unaccounted for. So again, leaks, accounting errors, other inefficiencies. Surface water. So we have almost 5 million gallons of water per day that is being diverted. This was a number that was a little hard to kind of figure out. Of the water that was diverted from streams, the unaccounted for water is only about 7% of that. And that is misleading, I will say, because we don't have a lot of information. And in a lot of cases, we didn't know how much people were either diverting or, you know, what the demand was. So we just couldn't make a good assessment of that. So that's just a caveat. Okay, so kind of taking an overall look at the water providers. There are 9 public water systems that provide potable water. Maui DWS accounts for 3 water systems, and Moloka'i Ranch also accounts for 3 water systems. And then below that, you'll see 2 large surface water non-potable systems. That's Moloka'i Irrigation System and the Mountain Water System. And then we have small private groundwater wells and small private stream diversions.
DHHL.
Oh yeah, DHHL up here as well. So you can kind of see what the breakdown is in terms of who's using what. So getting into each of those a little bit more. So Maui Department of Water Supply, again, 3 water systems, and they're served by groundwater wells. So this is taking a look at demand versus production. On the left-hand side, you'll see demand. So again, how much water is coming out of the tap? About 724,000 gallons of water per day, and used mostly for domestic purposes. On the right-hand side is total production. So how much is being pumped? That's about 892,000 gallons of water per day. So about 19% of unaccounted for water.
WS.
Yeah, DWS, yeah. So for DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, there's 2 wells in Kuala Pu'u, and it services the area in blue. And so for DHHL, total water demand is about 410,000 gallons of water per day. Again, mostly for domestic residential. So for domestic purposes, a lot of that for domestic residential. And then for production, about 451,000 gallons of water per day. So about a 9% water loss. So that's pretty good. Moloka'i Ranch Public Water Systems, that would be the blue line is the water system, and the purple are the service areas. And so for them, total demand for the potable water system is about 379,000 gallons of water per day, mostly for domestic purposes. Production is at about 559,000 gallons of water per day, about 32% higher than demand. Cavella Plantation down here. Again, groundwater. So demand at about 160,000 gallons of water per day for domestic residential. And production is at about 192,000 gallons of water per day. So about 17% water loss. National Park Service, and sorry, I didn't have a graphic for that, but on the left-hand side, total demand, about 27,000 gallons of water per day used for domestic residential, and total production, about 37,000 gallons of water per day, about 27% unaccounted for water. So moving on to non-potable sources, Moloka'i Irrigation System, which is the State Department of Agriculture. See the water system here. Total demand of about 2.4 million gallons of water per day for agriculture, getting that water from Waikolu Stream. Production is 2.4 million gallons of water per day, but we will say that the production data that we received was, they told us it was actually their metered use. So it's pretty close to demand. So this is one system where, you know, the unaccounted for water is not accurate. Mountain water system, so Moloka'i Ranch, that's the pink line this time. So total demand of 117,000 gallons of water per day, approximately, a lot of that for agriculture. But production is at about 409,000 gallons of water per day. So 71% unaccounted for water. Other private groundwater wells. This is another one where we didn't have good data to be able to assess the difference between production and demand. So you'll see that total demand is at 767,000 gallons of water per day, a lot of that for agriculture. And then private surface water, so small diversions. Again, not good data to be able to distinguish between production and demand. So demand of over 2 million gallons of water per day, mostly for agriculture. So looking forward to, you know, how much water do we think we're going to need by 2040? We did different demand scenarios, a low growth, a mid growth, and a high growth. And these are the basic assumptions that we use to develop that. For low growth, we said, you know, no change from current use. Mid growth, which is what we're saying is the most likely scenario, we see an increase of 0.5% in use per year. And this matches up with the 2018 Moloka'i community plan to the land use plan. And that's for most of the uses. For Department of Hawaiian Homelands, we used the projections that were done, you know, for them, by them, in the 2017 State Water Projects Plan. So that was specific to them. For the Moloka'i Irrigation System, a lot of that is DHHL ag use, and that also came from the 2017 State Water Projects Plan. We said that in this scenario, we would account for an increase in DHHL water needs, but no increase for non-DHHL users. And then for the private surface water and groundwater users, we said that there would be no change. For the high growth, an increase in 1% of water use per year, and again, in alignment with the Moloka'i land use plan. In a high scenario, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, we again followed the projections from the State Water Projects Plan. Moloka'i Irrigation System, again, using the Department of Hawaiian Homelands ag water projections from the State Water Projects Plan. And then also we added a 1% increase in water use per year to account for any increases in non-DHHL use. For Cabela Plantation, we said that there would be a full use of their entitled lands. So that was an additional 39 homes. So we assumed that they would be full build out. And then again, for private surface water and groundwater, no change. So this is what it looks like in terms of projected water demand. The first column is going to be, 2016 to 2020 average water demand, so current use. Again, for our low growth demand scenario, no change from existing. And then when we get to mid growth, which is what we're calling the most likely scenario, there was a slightly over 100% increase in demand. And that was mostly for agriculture, as you can see here. In the high growth demand scenario, it was 125% increase in demand over current use. And again, mostly for agriculture. So this shows you what the in the mid growth scenario, what the change in demand looks like by water provider. So the largest growth was for Department of Hawaiian Homelands, percentage-wise, for their potable needs, a 259% increase, which is about 1 million gallons of water per day. And then also for the Moloka'i irrigation system. So that one is mostly accounted for by for DHHL ag water needs. And that was a 255% increase. There was moderate growth in Department of Water Supply, Cabela Plantation, National Park Service, Moloka'i Ranch, and Mountain Water System, and no growth for the private groundwater and surface water. So looking at what the water would be used for, as we mentioned, the largest water demand increase was in agriculture, primarily due to growth by DHHL, and moderate growth in domestic residential, domestic non-residential, landscape irrigation, and industrial uses, and no change in military use. So if we're looking at water demand versus production, we have demand on the left-hand side, 14.3 MGD, million gallons of water per day, and 15.1 MGD in production needed to support that. So it's about a 6% difference. So as we mentioned before, water demands are currently served by sources, water demands are sometimes served by sources that are in other regions. And, for example, we have some potable water needs on the west end and in the southeast that are served by sources in the central area. We have some central non-potable water demands that are served by surface water coming from the northeast. So, there's water moving all over the island. But if we were to look at where the demands are, this is where they are. So, in the northeast, the production needed by 2040 would be 89,000 gallons of water per day for groundwater, and about 1 million gallons of water per day in surface water. So this is saying, if the Northeast were to take care of all of its water demands in district, then this is how much it would need. And so that's what these numbers are. We have total production needed for each of the different regions. So if you kind of just look at this, it seems like there's a lot of water or there's enough water in each area. But in our next phase, we're going to be looking more closely at, each water source. What is the demand? What is the feasibility of tapping into each of these sources? And, what are the potential impacts of using a source? And some of the things that we already know are things that we're going to need to look at. The Kualapu'u Aquifer System area, projected future demands exceed current sustainable yield. So that's something we're going to need to look at. In the West Aquifer Sector area, existing and projected future demands cannot be met by the water resources in that region. Southeast, existing and projected future demands are going to require new water use permits or increases in existing water use permits. And in the Central Aquifer Sector area, there's going to be a large increase in agricultural land use, and that will significantly increase the water demands. And, we're going to need to coordinate to try and figure out how to provide that. So, these and other issues, this is kind of really why we're trying to get your thoughts and comments, because we want to be able to address these things with community values in mind, to be able to guide our thinking. So that's why we are trying to come up with a framework for us to be able to, think about what are the possibilities and what seems to make sense. What we've tried to do in this preliminary draft is identify, water resource values that the community holds. And then also, what might our goals be to support those values? And then furthermore, what principles do we need to adhere to as we're trying to identify the water sources and match that up with what the demands are? So these next few slides are really, where we're hoping to get a lot of comment and questions from all of you so that we can get a better understanding and be pretty confident that we've got it right before we start making those matches. So this is value 8.1, and that corresponds to the preliminary draft. That's the section that it's in. So this first one, land and water are intimately entwined. Aloha Aina initiatives to protect and restore the uplands are critical for healthy water resources. So understanding that, the Mauka areas are vital to, healthy water resources. So looking at things like reforestation and management of invasive species. So our goal would be healthy forested watersheds. That's what we want to see. Principles, Moloka'i's Mauka watersheds are critical for the recharge of groundwater aquifers, stream flows, and freshwater seepage into the nearshore ocean environments. So understanding that, and also that balanced water use includes uses that require high quality water to remain in the environment. So accounting for keeping water in place. Value 8.2. Honor the Aina and what it provides, but also understand its limitations. So, when resources are stressed, we see it in degraded ecosystems. And if we can observe what the Aina is telling us, that, we can try and make adjustments and do better at management. So the goals being sustainable groundwater aquifers, healthy stream flows, and high quality water. And the principles of, observing and getting information so that we understand what's going on, and not just having that information, but sharing it with the community. And then to have adaptive management so that we can, get better and better each time. Value 8.3, take only what is needed and don't waste. Malama the natural systems so that they are efficient and effective, and always conserve the resource. So the Moloka'i community is one of the most, one of the best users of water very conservation oriented, but we do have aging water systems, and sometimes that makes it difficult to not waste. So goals being minimal water waste and efficient water storage and transmission. Principles, employing conservation practices for all types of water uses. And that way we don't have to take out so much from the environment. And then to repair and replace our infrastructure as needed to reduce that waste. Value 8.4, use technology to make better use of our water and prepare for anticipated climate change impacts. And it's important to provide water to the Moloka'i community without diminishing the resource. So, looking at things like reuse, recycling, household gray water use, stormwater capture, what technologies are out there that we can take advantage of? So goals, sustainable ground and surface water extraction, and resilient water resources that can respond to climate change impacts. Principles, water reuse, providing for non-potable water needs. And that way we don't have to extract so much from the environment. And then to diversify our water sources to improve resiliency. Value 8.5, ask experts from within the community for guidance and look to the past to help avoid future mistakes and mismanagement. So there's a lot we can learn from what has happened in the past, and we've found very easily that the Moloka'i community has a lot of knowledge, and we have been fortunate in that you've been willing to share that with us. So that has been really helpful. And we should continue to do that. So we aren't making the same mistakes over and over again. Goals, informed and place-based decision-making, principles, area histories, and cultural practices, can inform us about the resources and how they should be managed. And regional sustainability leads to smart decisions that protect resources island-wide. Value 8.6, Aina Momona. Strive towards making Moloka'i abundant, not just sufficient. Seek to balance aquifer recharge and withdrawal rates. So the goal is to make resources abundant, right? We don't want to just say, well, it's good enough. So, how can we work to put back to the resource, give back to the resource when we are extracting? So the goal of abundant groundwater aquifers and stream flows, principles, watershed management and recharge that will ensure healthy aquifers and streams. And then if we have abundant natural resources, we will have healthy communities. Value 8.7, almost done. Moloka'i takes care of its own. The community works together to provide for itself and each other. And this kind of came out of that story. It's retold in the beginning of the preliminary draft in the preface. That was the story of Ha'eha'iku, to be mindful of each other. And if we ensure that we take care of each other, the entire community will have what it needs. So the goal is a community that supports itself and each other. And the principle is, if people demonstrate this mindfulness towards each other and a dedication towards the entire community, Moloka'i will come together, as it always has, to make sure that everyone is taken care of. Last value, water sustains life, culture, and the environment and should be accessible to all. We know that Moloka'i residents pay some of the highest water rates in the country. And with costs increasing all around, the idea that water should be reliably and affordably available. So the goal is water delivery is affordable, and principles, reliable and affordable water for residential and agricultural purposes, especially, provides for community health and the local economy. So our next phase will be looking at water source options. These are some of the things that we've started to look at, and we will be digging into a lot more. And we will be presenting that in the public review draft. So we'll talk about each of these. We'll talk about where we think it may or may not be appropriate. And this is why we are asking for feedback on the framework, because I think that the framework will help us understand how to look at each of these and where it would be appropriate or not. So where to find the preliminary draft? There are hard copies and comment sheets available at these 5 locations: Kilohana Elementary School, Mauna Loa Elementary School, Moloka'i High School, Moloka'i Public Library, and the Maui County Moloka'i District Office. This is the DWS District Office. We also have it online, and we can put that link up in the chat. And we're asking for comments by the end of the month. You can send them to Lily. We can provide that information as well in the chat, or if you want to just put your phone up to this this code, you can. It'll take you directly to the project website, and you can find all of the information there. And I think. Okay, so next steps, we're hoping to receive feedback on this preliminary draft and use the values, goals, and principles to guide our assessment of the water resource options and be able to match up the water sources to water demands, put together a public review draft and come back to you with that public review draft to see what you have to say. And that's all I have. I'm going to stop sharing.
So I put in the chat box, there's a direct link to the online version of the preliminary draft plan. There's also a direct link to a Google form that can be used for sharing comments. That's just one option for sharing comments. The 5 different on-island locations that Sherry named off, all of those have hard copies of comment sheets that can be sent back to us in the mail. So that's another option for providing comments. I also shared my direct email address. You're welcome to just send us an email. We have a quick question in the chat box, Sherry. The question is, I'm going to turn it over to you. Mahina Poi Poi asks, mahalo, can you describe the criteria for determining mid and high growth scenarios? Thank you, Mahina.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to, I think, let me know if I get the question wrong. I was going to go back to a slide. Let me just. Oh, sorry, slow. Oh, here we go. Okay, can you see that slide?
Yep, it just popped up.
Okay, so I think that this answers the question. So what went into the projections for the mid growth versus the high growth? So for the mid growth, for the most part, we try to kind of be in alignment with the Moloka'i community plan, the land use plan. So that said that they anticipated a 0.5% increase in population every year. So that's what we did for a lot of the water systems. For Department of Hawai'i and Homeland specifically, because they did do their own specific water projections, in the 2017 State Water Projects Plan, we used that for projecting their needs. And they had a medium projection, they had low, medium, and high projection, so we used the medium projection. For the Moloka'i irrigation system, we used what DHHO had again projected in the State Water Projects Plan. And we did no increase for the non-DHHO users, and then no growth for private water users, private well owners and private diversion owners. For the high growth, it was similar in that we used an increase of 1% per year, and that matched up with the land use plan. Department of Hawaiian Homelands, we again used their projections for their own potable water needs and for their agricultural water needs. And this time we added a 1% increase in water use per year for the non-DHHO users. Cavella Plantation, we pulled them out this time and said, hey, you know, they might have full use of all of their entitled lands. And this was equivalent to 39 additional homes. And we didn't increase use for the private wells and diversions. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think I was just wondering where the population came in, because I did see this slide earlier, but it says increase by like 0.5% or 1% per year. And I just wasn't sure if that was the population increase. And then with that, you know, I think it's important to point out that our population hasn't increased the way it was projected in all of our community plans decades past. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
You.
Yeah, we tried to match that up with the land use plan, which that's where the population kind of comes in. So the land use plan accounted for a 0.5% increase in the I think they call it a medium growth scenario. Yeah, and understood about the increases in population. At the very least, this increase is conservative, so that you'll at least know that you have the water available, and the if the population does increase at this rate, that you'll know where the water is coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mahina. Thank you, Sherry. I have a comment in the chat box from Danny and Paolo. As a resident of West Moloka'i, I'm highly interested in how to educate my community on this holistic approach in reference to value 8.3. How can we do better as a community to manage our resources? And in addition, how can we learn and educate ourselves based on past experience, referring to value 8.5? Also very interested in resources for value 8.6 and 8.7.
Okay. I am pulling up things.
Yeah, Sherry, maybe you can just pull up the values themselves.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about how some of the ways that we came up with these values. Most recently, the outreach that we did in May was a kind of in-person pop-up outreach at a few different locations across the island. And along with that came an online survey and an in-person survey that we asked folks to participate in. And part of that asked questions about folks' values towards water resources, their concerns for water resources, what they would like to see, you know, priorities and whatnot. And so a lot of these values came from the responses that we got from community folks, not just in that one outreach, but kind of collectively across all of the ones that we've done. We kind of put together these different values, the goals and the principles based on that feedback. And so I do want to kind of direct you in that way, in saying that it did really come from community input, as opposed to coming from us as the resource. It came from community guidance. So I think that that's important to understand the kind of source there. Sherry, did you want to weigh in at all?
Sure. So, you know, a lot of these is, I feel just, part of it is just asking the question, you know, not wasting, there are, I think DWS has like conservation education programs. I think we can all look into what we each can be doing, but then also looking at, you know, the information being available. So for example, you know, we mentioned the difference between production and demand, and in some cases we couldn't tell what that difference was. And so then we can't tell if we're wasting by how much of a problem it is. And so some of that is just getting that information and making it available and educating ourselves, and to be able to start to identify, you know, where to look and how we can move forward.
I can add something, Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned you're a West End resident, so I assume you're served by the private purveyor. And as Sherry mentioned, the county has a lot of outreach programs trying to involve our customers in the community in various ways, direct outreach through events and things online, and there's school activities and contests, etc. If you're served by a private purveyor, I mean, a lot of that information, generally what you can do as a resident, you know, directly in your home, your yard, or as a farmer, as a business, that information is available from us. But I would think it's a good idea to reach out to your water purveyor too, to ask, you know, if that information is not available, maybe invite them to your homeowner association meetings, or what other opportunities there may be. They should be sending out consumer confidence reports annually, so you should have information about the source, so you can use that kind of as a resource to get more information about what specifically can you do in your area from the system that's serving you.
Yeah, and then for, you know, asking for, I guess, looking at the past for what has been done, there's been a lot of studies and commentary and testimony about all kinds of water resources. And we've collected some of that, and we can share what we've found. And there's a lot of people in the community too. And if we can, I think maybe if people are comfortable, we could share at least a list of people that we've talked to, so that if people are interested in finding more about certain resources, that they can, you know, just start talking to each other. So that would be, I'm on the wrong slide. Asking for experts within the community. And, you know, it seems like everybody on Moloka'i kind of knows each other. So, you know, just talking to your neighbors and finding out, hey, you know, I'm curious about this. Who should I talk to kind of find out about it? And I feel like we've been fortunate in that people have been willing to talk and share. In terms of really technical information as well, the Water Commission has been really great at, you know, sharing what they know. And if people have questions, and, you know, they'll come out and they'll talk, and they'll, in some cases, maybe even they've initiated some studies. So they've been a really good resource as well. US Geological Survey has done a number of studies. So there's a lot of resources out there. There were a couple other values. Yeah, so abundance. This is what we're always striving for, you know, putting back, giving back when we take. So if we're extracting water, you know, how do we try and provide for, you know, the groundwater to grow itself again? And I think that's where there's been that discussion about reforestation. The rain follows the forest, allowing the trees to capture that water. So that's one of the things that we have been seriously looking at. See. And I feel like 8.7 is something that we as planners, we can see that and we can identify that, but that's something that you as the community are doing yourselves, and it's something that you initiate on your own. These are some of the values that we've heard about and seen where people are talking to each other and asking, hey, what do you need? Let's work together to try and make this happen. And so just continuing that, I think if people show a real sincere desire to work together, that that gets reciprocated. So that's just my opinion. But
thank you, Sherry. Wanted to jump back to the chat box. Mahina asked, are you planning in-person meetings on Moloka'i? So for this preliminary draft plan, we are not planning to do in-person outreach. We are hoping to get our comments during the comment period, and we provided kind of hard copies and online access to the document. And I think the reason for that is we want to make sure that we can do a robust kind of outreach push when it comes to the public review draft. So the purpose for this preliminary draft, I think typically with a water use and development plan kind of planning process, you don't have a preliminary draft that goes out to the public like this. Part of our reason for doing this is to kind of check in with community along the way and make sure that we're going in the proper direction, and especially to get some good guidance on, like what Sherry was mentioning. The values are pretty critical. Again, we're doing our best to incorporate these values and just wanting to check in with folks and make sure that it's accurate. And then also just checking in general with the whole preliminary draft to make sure that, folks have an opportunity to comment. And so we do plan on doing a more robust on-island outreach once the public review draft is prepared. Keani, if there are proposed amendments, how do you decide whether they're incorporated? I think, Sherry, do you want to try to tackle that question from Keani?
I think it really just depends on what it is. I think we take each comment individually and see how it fits in. And in some cases, we may go back to whoever provided the comment to get more information or see, what the intent was. Yes, I think it kind of just depends. I'm sorry, it's not a real yes or no straightforward answer.
Thank you.
But sorry, but yeah, one more thing. I mean, we will be coming back around with the public review draft, so people will be able to see how if and how they, their comments have been incorporated. So you can call us on it if there's still an issue.
Thank you, Sherry. Keani said, mahalo, Sherry, maybe I can follow up with an email. Yes, please. Definitely reach out. We'd be happy to hear from you and from anyone else who's willing to provide comments to us. Again, if there's anyone who has called in and maybe you would prefer to just unmute and ask a question or unmute and provide a comment, you're welcome to do so. If you toggle the unmute, you will pop up to the top of my screen and I'm able to call on you from there. Or you're welcome to put your question or comment into the chat box. and we can get to it that way as well. If you are not wanting to provide comments or questions at this time, again, I have shared the comment form, the link to the comment form in the chat box. And you can also go to the project website. Actually, if you just Google Moloka'i Water Use and Development Plan, it will pop up with the project website, which is on the Maui County DWS webpage. And so you can find all of our contact information and the different links to providing comments. I'm not seeing any more comments in the chat box or anyone who has unmuted and wants to provide comments. So Sherry, Eva, or Marty, did you? Oh, here we go. Hi, Sybil. I see your hand up. If you can unmute, please go ahead and ask your question or comment.
Hello everyone. I kind of apologize. I came in late. I was actually on another meeting. I really haven't had a chance to dive deep into the, what is this, 80-something page document of the draft. And I kind of wanted to really hear your answer to Kiani's questions on, when we provide our written comments, or, when we provide comments here, how would that be generated or incorporated into the plan? I know she was talking about proposed amendments, but I would also want to know how our comments during the draft plan would be incorporated into this plan. For example, I probably went right in my comments too, but I just kind of wanted to share it so I can capture it both, so that I don't lose what I want to say. What I wanted to actually refer to as page 1 on the preface of the Molokai community values. What I actually wanted to propose actually to put in insert from our Molokai Future of Hawaiian Island. I know you guys briefly put in the four values of what we've been standing on: Moloka'i Nuiahina, Moloka'i Puli'o'o, Moloka'i no Kaheke, and Moloka'i Aina Mamona. But there's values in those, and each one plays a part. And to just state as a title, I would want to kind of insert the overall objectives of, when we talk about Moloka'i Nuiahina, and it talks about our environment. When we talk about the meaning of where Moloka'i Aina Mamona comes from, it talks about productivity of Moloka'i's economy. Yeah. When we talk about the Moloka'i Puli'o'o and where did that come from, beyond what the land of power for prayer, but yet it's a self-governance, is to remind our people that, it's just a reminder of these core values of where it comes from. Yeah. With self-governance and with Moloka'i no Kaheke, Molokai is the greatest. And, you talk about a healthy community. That's what it means. And the meaning and breadth and depth to that, because it ties into a lot of stuff in this plan, especially, the values that, you guys shared earlier that's embedded in here as a framework. And so I'm trying to understand when this plan will be implemented, meaning that those framework will be utilized, yeah, when we allocate these types of water in the future. And I really appreciate that you guys went in and actually put in those largest land users, or what do you guys call the water users, to actually see currently where they are, and really looking at what could be future use. I would want to see more. Wait, I had actually one comment though on you guys chapter 9 that I was actually skimming over. But hold on, let me try and find them, because I actually went group them all together. And now I just went disorganized myself. But somewhere in chapter 9, you guys talk about, I really can't find it. Okay, wait, you might have to come back to me because I thought I had it in there and I didn't. Okay, right there. So in chapter 9 goes into, so after your framework for allocating water, you guys look at the preliminary water resource options. I kind of wanted to understand the water resource values, goals, and principles. Because you talk about conservation, the recycled water facilities, on-site water reuse, brackish water, desalination, reforesting, Onimana law. And I think the one that I wanted to press upon was 9.7 was the feral deer management. I think it may be too premature because I would want to know where you got this information from. And I would want evidence to understand that fencing, because it's pretty bold right here. Additionally, fencing can be effective in protecting the most critical watershed areas of aquifer recharge, helping to ensure that groundwater sources are maintained. And I don't have evidence. I don't see evidence enough that something that bold can be in something as a water use development plan under feral deer management. And I would want more reference to this because we have such a predominantly controversial, I'm gonna just say controversial going on with our ungulates, with our deer here on the island. I mean, it's evident already that we've been in the past couple of years on an emergency proclamation, but for me, because it crosses a lot of different types of walk of life, especially sustainability and a food source. And it couples with nuisance when you think about deer, but I think this kind of needs to be either referenced a little bit more with more background and evidence that this can be supported, because I don't see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sybil. Sherry, if you wouldn't mind chiming in a little bit more about kind of chapter 9 and what we expect to see in the public review draft, and kind of how that might look.
Sure. And thank you for the comments. I think we can definitely provide more. Well, the intent was to provide more background and reference for each of these. This was kind of just an initial presentation of the things that we're starting to look at, and definitely, wanting to use the guidance from the values and the goals and principles to say, well, are these appropriate, and if so, where and how? So yeah, definitely looking into each of these, what is feasible, and some of these may not be, what makes sense, some of these may not make sense. So we're going to be diving into that in the next submittal, the next thing that we come out with for you guys, and say, here's where we ended up, here's where we think a particular strategy makes sense, and this is why. So thanks for the comments.
Thank you, Sherry.
A column I do see in your chapter 5.12 on page 25. You guys do mention really, really small about feral deer impacts, but that's about it. That's all I see in the plan for now.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Sybil. I don't see any other comments right now in the chat box. Oh, Uncle Mango, I see your hand up. Feel free to unmute. Yep, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Aloha ku, aloha everybody. I'm gonna kind of back up what a little bit what Sybil was saying. Knowing some of the background, they put up a 4-foot fence 20 years ago. That didn't keep the deer from jumping up into the mountains. Now they're putting up a taller fence. I just maybe I just a real fast thing on this one. Now they're putting up a taller fence. Now all they did is going to still be up there. They're still going to be up there, and if they block us out, if they stop the taking of from our people and stuff like that. So it's just a thought. Knowing what happened in the other islands and stuff like that with the loss of water to the different Hawai'is, the different Hawai'is coming down the mountain. you're making the animals go to certain sources instead of spreading out to go to those sources, which is what's going to hurt our aquifers seriously. And with that being said, you guys made a comment earlier. I have looked at the paper, but the comment that was made, and I'm not, I think it was Sherry, but you were just talking about what you guys were talking about, and it was that the watershed area is what is taking care of replenishing the water to the ground. If you know, I mean, if you really think about, I'm not an engineer, but I do know how it was when I was a young kid on the different islands. I know how it was before, and I know the ahapo'a design. That's why I make these things. I make ahapo'a designs for the homestays and stuff like that. If you really want to get water to go back into the ground, you need to get this water back from the watershed into the rivers, into the kahawais, into the awais, coming down the mountain to the ocean. While it comes through the mountain and down the mountain, that's when it replenishes back into the ground. Otherwise, it's just flowing actually behind the island all the way into the ocean. We have to bring that water back on this side of the island. All of the dams and all those kind of things, the diversions, many of them which are not needed today or should not be there today. I just really feel that if we want to replenish the water, we should definitely be looking at that, the replenishing of the water into the different into the different rivers. Not just only Covella Stream. I mean, there's so many other ones that used to run when I was young, when I used to come here before. So yeah, that's all I would like to share. I will make comments and bring a few more things up in that paper thing that you guys got on the forums, and then not bother everybody's time. So God bless you all, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody.
Mahalo, Uncle Mango. Thank you so much. If anybody else has comments or questions, you're welcome to raise your hand. You're welcome to unmute, or you're welcome to drop a comment or question into the chat box.
I get one question. Have you guys covered in the plan about the processes that exist, like with seaworm, and their processes, or is that something that wouldn't be a part of this plan because you're not focusing on that type of process?
What type of process, Sybil?
Well, I have money. Because I know one of the meeting discussions that we've had a while back is trying to incorporate, when we want to incorporate these cultural values and, mostly looking at cultural design, it's really looking at who actually regulates it and question the regulation on maybe being able to utilize either policy to help advance, because it's just a framework for allocating water. So I don't know, it's when you say framework, if it's just guidance and not no force and effect of law, but if there's some policies that could be in place to provide substance, like with the seaworm process. I know one of the meetings what we talked about, and I know Kiani's familiar with it, when we talked about cultural sustainable yield. I know one of the meetings that they've discussed in length is about the defining sustainable yield. And I know one of the USGS reports, I think it was in this meeting, you guys had the USGS report, their findings. But the findings wasn't equal up to the cultural impact. They showed all the lo'is, they showed the local ias, but there was no cultural resource or practitioner that was able to interpret that. So there was no cultural interpretation for these areas. And defining sustainable yield is also defining what cultural sustainable yield is all about. And when you talk about our cultural and what you've provided within these values, I don't see substance that could back that up. But there's data to prove it, but there's no substance to follow. And I kind of was hoping that this plan would provide that substance, so that our cultural integration and design could somehow be incorporated. That's why I asked about the CWRM process, because they're regulatory, yeah.
Mhm.
I want to just address that a bit, Sherry, in terms of the existing, the purpose of the plan and how we integrate the CWRM processes. So yes, Sybil's, that's correct. Of course, they are the regulatory body and they have the jurisdiction over all water resources, especially all over Molokai, since that's all a designated groundwater management area. And they're pursuing adopting in-stream flow standards, numerical IFS for several streams. So this plan should still have the role of guiding CWRM in their regulatory powers. So it's a guidance document for the county and for the private purveyors. But as part of the Hawai'i Water Plan, this plan both need to be consistent with those policies that already been adopted on a statewide level in the Water Resources Protection Plan that was the last one updated in 2019, with the State Water Projects Plan, with the Agricultural Water Use and Development Plan, etc. But the policies or the strategies and the values in the Molokai Water Plan should guide CWRM in all their decisions in water reservations, in designation, in approving water use permits, allocation, etc. So it has kind of like that dual function. Yeah, it doesn't have the authority of law, but it's a guidance to inform those regulatory decisions.
Okay, so with that being said, I know I've been on a few meetings when a lot of our kupunas came on, especially in the beginning of these meetings, expressing the history of our water. And I don't see the history of our water, because we've been, especially those that went up to the Supreme Court. I think that history needs to be embedded in this plan, because Molokai worked very, very hard in protecting our water rights. To this day, we still get a few going on in Cavella Stream. And I don't see any, at least background to ensure that Molokai has been sacred in a sense of protecting their water and protecting their water resources. And I know I've been in a few meetings when there's a lot of kupuna that stated that they've been in these fights and these battles. I mean, yeah, I can say I'm with Molokai Ranch, but I think historically, the data should be somewhere in here, just to save the face to say that it happened. I don't see it, and I think our water use and development plan should take time in knowing the history of how our water, and the fight that our people went through and continue to do it. I think that's valuable. That's historical data that I think should be documented.
Sybil, just a quick comment from Bruce. Thank you for that comment. That's a great comment. And I think we are lacking in recognizing that history for Molokai Water. And we will do our best. We can't write hundreds and hundreds of pages about it, but we'll do our best to include the really important parts of that history in our next draft. So thank you.
Mahalo, I appreciate that.
Mahalo, Sybil. If anybody has other comments or questions, again, you can drop them in the chat box. You're welcome to unmute or raise a hand. We don't have any other comments or questions, then we can also wrap up this evening meeting. Again, we did record it, so we'll be posting on the project webpage. We are having another meeting as well this week on Thursday, December 8th, same time. We will be giving the same presentation. Obviously, the discussion, comments, and questions that come about will be different, but we did want to offer, 2 different days for folks depending on their schedule. We'll be recording both meetings and posting them online. So all are welcome to attend. And I'm gonna share one more time in the chat box where you can find the online version. There's a direct link here to the online version of the preliminary draft plan and also an online version of providing comments. And then Sherry, can you screen share that last slide? It might be the second to the last slide. It shares the different locations for the hard copy. So Kilohana Elementary, Mauna Loa Elementary, Molokai High, thanks Sherry. Also Molokai Public Library and the Maui County Molokai District Office. There are multiple hard copies, printed copies of the preliminary draft plan there. And there's also hard copies of our comment form. The comment form also has a QR code on there, so you can do online comments if you prefer. And then Sherry, if you can flick to the next slide, that has the QR code, yep, and my direct contact information. Of course, you can reach out to Sherry and Bruce, but this is my contact information. If you prefer to just provide comments by email, you're welcome to do that as well. Looks like we don't have any other comments in the chat, just lots of mahalos. And so I think we're gonna wrap up this evening. Thank you everybody for your time. Thanks for tuning in. Again, we're gonna be posting this online.
Okay, now. Thanks,
Aloha,
everyone.
Thank you.
Mahalo, everyone.
Mahalo, Uncle. Thank you.